Hey guys, welcome to another video. I'm really excited to share this piece with you today. Funnily enough, I had originally intended for this to be a sort of self-portrait that I could use across social media as a general profile picture sort of thing, and it didn't take me long to realize that she doesn't really look quite like me, but I still really enjoyed the process, so I'm looking forward to sharing all of it with you guys. Hope you don't mind I'm speeding through the Linework section for you just because especially with the orange colored pencil that I used, it's not super interesting, I don't think, but don't worry, I will compare for you in just a second. Here you can see the original sketch next to my finished colored pencil lines, and also I just wanted to show you there the texture that I was kind of going for in the hair, sort of this summery sunbeam light sort of thing that I was super excited about. Yeah, so here I'm gonna just start laying in those initial hair layers, and while I was working on this piece, I thought of a topic that I really wanted to discuss with you guys, and that is the question of, do better art supplies make you a better artist? And of course, if you've ever asked yourself this question before, or if you've heard anyone else talk about it, the short answer is no. Buying better art supplies does not make you a better artist. That's kind of the idea of the cheap art supply challenge, which is a video I'm hoping to share with you guys soon, and all those kinds of drawing challenges is the idea that if you understand the fundamentals of art, those will shine through whether you're using super cheap tools or more expensive tools. Of course, better quality tools can make that easier for you, and easier to achieve what you're looking for, but oftentimes there are a lot of artists, like one of my favorite artists on Instagram, she uses super cheap materials. Like, I was so surprised to learn that she's using like regular inexpensive things, and I'm sure she does that intentionally and purposefully to show people that you can create beautiful art with cheaper supplies. But anyway, what I actually wanted to talk about in that regard to that question is the opposite end of that, as to when better art supplies, or rather specific art supplies, can make you a different artist, or a better artist rather, because that's something that I have been experiencing lately. And I'm not necessarily talking about more expensive art supplies, I'm just talking about finding the right art supplies for you. So for example, prior to the sketchbook I was using, I was working in a Mossry sketchbook, and I loved the paper. It was really nice. The sketchbook is like $25 or so, so it's not super cheap as far as sketchbooks go, especially because you can get like a Canson sketchbook, Canson mixed media sketchbook that's way bigger for like, I don't know, $7 or $8. So the Mossry sketchbook is more expensive. The paper quality is definitely better, but ultimately when I switched to the sketchbook that I'm using now, I felt like I was a better artist, and the reason wasn't because the sketchbook itself held some sort of magical property or anything like that. It was really because the sketchbook and I like fit together. So the current sketchbook that I'm using is the Stillman and Burns Zeta series sketchbook, and it's larger than the Mossry sketchbook, but smaller than the Canson XL mixed media sketchbook. I'm using that one as a reference because it tends to be a common one, and I had the 9x12 Canson. And part of the reason why I feel like I have been doing better in this sketchbook, which I'm so excited to share with you when it's done, I'm about halfway through it now. Part of the reason I feel like I'm doing so much better in this sketchbook is just because the size better facilitates the way that I like to create art. So I'm able to do much larger portraits and larger full body studies and things like that. I mostly like to draw people and characters, so the sketchbook itself just better facilitates the way I enjoy creating art. And when I feel like the things like the paper quality and the size better fit what I enjoy, I'm more excited to create art. And in that instance, better supplies can actually make you a better artist. One, if you're more excited to make art, because then you're going to practice more often, and you're going to experiment more, and you're going to try more and simply do more, which is really what you need to be a better artist, is just more mileage, more practice, more doing it. So in that regard, yeah, actually, certain art supplies can make you a better artist, but that doesn't necessarily mean more expensive art supplies, because you might find a cheap watercolor palette or some cheap alcohol markers or something like that that you absolutely love to work with, and that's going to spur you to be more inspired and more passionate about art, and that can make you better. Like, for example, I have some synthetic brushes that I picked up at Walmart, like at our local supermarket, and they were like $4 for a bunch of brushes, and they're super cheap, but I love working with them. They're big, long brushes, and they're just so enjoyable to use, and they make me enjoy art more, and they make me do more art, which makes me a better artist. So, for example, like the brush I'm using right now is a brush that has a name that I'm not remembering right now, but it's my favorite brush of all time. I did this whole piece with this brush, and it's fantastic, and no matter how much the brush costs or where you can get it or where you can't get it, the truth is that I enjoy it and I use it, and it makes me want to do more art, and that makes me better. So there are some instances where more expensive tools have even hindered me as an artist. Like, for example, the paper that I'm working on right now is Strathmore cold press watercolor paper, which is a good quality paper. It's not the cheapest paper you can get, but a brand like Arches, for example, would be more expensive. And we have a lot of Arches paper here at my home somehow, because my father-in-law used to do large watercolor paintings, so we have the massive sheets of Arches watercolor paper, and I struggle a lot with that paper just because it's cold pressed, but it's super, super, super thick. So it's basically like rough paper, and there are times when I try to use that paper and I struggle, and things don't come out the way I want them to. And of course, if I practiced on it more, I would enjoy it. But when you can find art supplies, and of course practicing on anything, you will get better on it, but when you can find art supplies that it's a joy just to pick up and to use and to create lines with and to create textures with, that's one of those rare instances, I would say. It's like this golden gem, this little nugget where, yes, this art supply is actually making you a better artist, simply in the fact that it impassions you and it invigorates you and it makes you want to do more art. If you don't mind, I'm going to jump a little bit back into this piece to talk a bit briefly. I had really enjoyed the texture I was making in the hair on this piece at this point, but I was lacking in contrast. I wish that I had started adding lines and more contrast to the eye area more, and then I might have seen that I had enough contrast and didn't necessarily need to line the hair, which is what I'm doing now. I really enjoyed the process, and I'm really looking forward to using watercolors for lines more, but I feel like in lining the hair at this point, I lost a lot of the directional, whimsical feeling that I had originally added to the hair that I really enjoyed. So while I do ultimately like the piece overall, I feel like the effect that I added to the hair in the very beginning kind of gets lost and kind of goes away at this point. But in that regard, I know I'm just totally ranting and talking about all kinds of stuff today, but this is what's gonna happen, so yeah. I really enjoyed making my line work with watercolors. And now, I know that a brush is more difficult to control for line work than like a micron pen or any other like fine liner or something like that, but black lines have just seemed way too harsh for me lately. So I've been trying cold erase colored pencil, which I really like, or different colored inks with a dip pen, or even lining with some of my other brush markers, and it's a little bit hard when I can't control the specific color, so using a brush and lining in this way has been really nice for me because I've felt like I've been able to get more organic lines. It is a challenge because it does require more control and you actually have to learn how to work with the brush, but I really, really enjoyed it, so that was really, really fun. Like this part in particular of lining up the plants. That's plants. Okay, we'll talk about plants in a second. But lining the plants I really enjoyed because I felt like this was the point where I was actually able to give the plants like a little bit more of a 3D form and shape, and not just leaves, but they actually had like a direction and a little bit of perspective that actually made a little bit more sense. So plants. Let's talk about plants for a second. Do you mind? Do you mind if we talk about plants? We're just going to talk about everything. We'll probably talk about like existential crises and the answer to the universe and everything by the end of this video, but plants first. Plants. So I was going for like a floral portrait sort of thing here because I haven't really done that much, but I was seeing it by some of my favorite artists and I really wanted to try it. And while I am happy with the incorporation of flowers and plants and things in this, I feel like it would have been extremely beneficial if I had actually looked at reference of real plants, which seems silly, but I kind of just made these shapes up on my own, and I do like them, but I think if I had had contrasting sizes, like some of the plants were larger leaves, and then maybe those little thistly puffy things, if those had been like smaller and more delicate, it would have added more textural interest to the piece overall, if that makes sense. I feel like that would have been really fun. But I do have some really, really exciting projects that I'm planning for very soon in the future. Oh man, phone, come on. I have some really exciting, I do have some really exciting projects for very soon in the future that involve plants and things like that, so I'm really looking forward to getting to those, and don't worry, you guys will get to see that process moving forward. Yeah, so that's really exciting. Plants. Reference plants. I reference people. Why wouldn't I look at reference for plants too? That's a good idea, guys. Reference is great. You should use reference. Anyway, we're getting into one of my favorite parts of this piece, which was adding like final details like freckles and highlights. So again, with the original intention of this being a self-portrait, I wanted her to have freckles because I have freckles, but I also wanted the freckles to have some dimension. So I was trying to make some lighter and some darker, and that's really easy to achieve if you blot away the wet paint and leave like a lighter layer and then go back in with some darker ones, and I feel like it really helped her to sit better in the piece as a whole, and everything just kind of blends together a little bit better, if that makes sense. And then of course the fun part is just taking the white, adding the highlights, and she is done. Yay! So I feel like it's a little brown. I mean, brown is good, brown is fine, but ultimately I enjoyed this piece, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. It's so fun to go back and this be created again. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and listening to my rambling. If you did, I enjoy rambling to you guys. Your comments make me so happy. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up so I know that the big internet universe is not an empty place. And subscribe if you're new. I'm really excited to share more content with you guys. Thank you so much for all the feedback you've given me so far. Oh, I'm gonna run out of time. Okay, bye!